Your air conditioner has been running since breakfast. It is 9 o'clock at night now. The sun went down hours ago, and the thing still has not shut off, not once. You can hear it out there in the dark, grinding away, and you already know what the bill is going to look like at the end of the month. And somewhere in the back of your head, you have started quietly doing the math on whether you can just run it less and sit there and be uncomfortable. Put that math down for a minute, because I want to show you something better. There is a way to pull 10-15 degrees out of a room for about $2, with no machine at all, not a fan, not a smaller air conditioner, an old sheet, a bowl of water, and a piece of physics so old that every hot country on Earth stumbled onto it thousands of years before the first air conditioner was ever bolted to a wall. I'm Richard Nakamura. I grew up in a Japanese house in Ohio, and I spent 30 years hauling away machines folks swore they could not live without. Most of them were working just fine. The people just never knew there was another way to stay cool. So, today I am going to give you the $2 setup first, then the handful of old habits that stack right on top of it, and at the very end, the strangest one of the lot, a little cooler you can build out of 2 flower pots that runs all day on nothing and keeps your food cold. Let me start with why you have never heard of this. Because it is not a conspiracy, and I am not going to sell you one. Cooling is the single most expensive thing your house does. The Department of Energy puts close to half of a home's energy bill on heating and cooling, and in the dead of summer, nearly all of that is the air conditioner, fighting the heat all day and mostly losing. Nobody ever handed you a cheaper way, and the reason is simple. There is no money in it. A wet sheet hanging in a window has never once sold a service contract, or a replacement filter, or a monthly payment. So the knowledge just quietly went away, one generation at a time, while the machines took over. So here is the thing itself, plain and simple. Take an old cotton sheet, soak it in cold water, wring it out until it just stops dripping, and hang it flat across an open window with a bit of a breeze moving through. Set a bowl of water on the sill underneath it. That is the whole setup. The air that comes through that wet sheet lands in your room 10 to 15 degrees cooler than the air that went in. And the reason has nothing to do with the sheet being cold to the touch. I will come back to that in a minute because it is the whole secret. And it is the same reason your skin goes cold the second you step dripping out of a shower. But before I build the rest of it with you, let me take you back to where I first saw it work, because I did not learn any of this out of a book. My mother grew up in Japan, in an old wooden house that was built for the summer instead of the winter, and she carried that with her to Ohio, and never once trusted a machine to do a job she could do with a bucket. And Ohio summers are their own special misery, wet and thick and heavy on your chest. Every neighbor we had would seal the house up by noon and run the air conditioner flat out until bed. My mother did the exact opposite. In the evening, she threw open every window in the house and let the cool night air come pouring through for hours. Then, before the sun was even properly up, she went around and shut all of it, every window, every shade, and locked that cool air inside. By the middle of the afternoon, when the whole street could hear the neighbors' units roaring, our house was still quietly holding on to the night. And out on the porch, she hung these damp reed blinds, and at dusk she would take a ladle and throw a little water across the stones by the door. As a boy, I thought she was just tidying up. She was cooling the air before it ever reached us. The same exact trick a servant was doing with a wet grass screen in an Indian palace 400 years ago. The same trick the Egyptians were doing with wet reeds 4,000 years before that. She would have laughed if you called it thermodynamics. To her, it was just how a person kept a house. And I spent 30 years after that hauling broken air conditioners out of American homes, sweating clean through my shirt, thinking about that cool house that never owned one. So, let me build the whole thing with you now. First, why that wet sheet actually works. Then, the old habits that multiply it. And then, at the end, that 2-pot cooler I promised you. The wet sheet works because of one fact you cannot argue your way around. When water evaporates, when it turns from a liquid into a vapor, it has to pull a tremendous amount of heat out of the air to make that change. Every single gram of water that lifts off carries about 540 calories of heat away with it. Hang a pound of water evaporating in a window and you are pulling roughly 1,000 BTUs of heat out of the air moving past it, and a BTU is the very same unit your air conditioner is rated in. The cloth is not cold. It is robbing the heat straight out of the passing air and carrying it off as vapor. That is why the air comes out the far side cooler than it went in, and it is exactly why a breeze on your wet skin feels like ice. And this is not a hunch, and it is not new. Every dry, hot place that ever put up a wall arrived at it on their own. In the old desert city of Yazd, in Iran, they built tall towers called wind catchers that funnel the higher, cooler air down through the house and across water on the way, and people have measured those centuries-old rooms sitting 8 to 12 degrees cooler than the street outside, on no power at all. In India, the Emperor Akbar hung wet grass screens across his windows, and his own court record said that when you throw the water on them, winter seems to arrive in the middle of summer. Even the modern engineers agree. Back in the 1980s, researchers at the University of Arizona built an evaporative tower out in the Tucson desert and clocked a steady 10 to 18 degrees of cooling off nothing but water and dry air. 4,000 years, every corner of the map, and the same answer every time. Now, a couple of things about the sheet so yours actually works. It has to be cotton or linen, a natural fiber, because polyester will not hold and release the water the way you need. Hang it as a single flat layer, stretched across the opening, not bunched up and not doubled over, so the air is forced through the wet cloth instead of sneaking around it. You want a real cross breeze, a window or a door open on the far side of the room, and if you have only got the one window, just stand a box fan behind the sheet to push the air through. Re-wet it every couple of hours, which takes about 30 seconds. But the sheet is only the start, because the old folks never leaned on any one trick. They stacked a few plain habits, and the habits are where the real savings hide. My mother's window rhythm is the first and the biggest one. Cool at night, seal at dawn. Even in a heat wave, most of the country drops into the 60s overnight, far below whatever your house is holding in the afternoon. So you open up after sundown, let it wash through all night, and then at first light, you close every window and drop every shade and trap that cool inside before the sun can get at it. That one habit, all by itself and completely free, takes a serious bite out of a summer bill. The second habit is shade, and it is simpler than folks make it. The sunlight landing on your house is the heat. A single sunny window can dump as much heat into a room as a small air conditioner can pull back out. So you stop it outside before it ever touches the glass, with an awning over the south and west windows, or an outdoor sunscreen, or a tree, or a vine on a trellis on the hot side of the house. And the third habit, if you have a basement, is to just go down into it during the worst hours. The ground a few feet down holds around 55 degrees all year, no matter what the sky is doing, so a basement on a 95-degree afternoon is already cooler than any room upstairs. My mother did the hot part of the day down in the cellar, snapping beans and doing the quiet work, and came back up when the sun let go. Now, I owe you some honesty here because this is where most videos lie to you. All of this works far better in dry air than in wet air. Out west, in the desert states, that wet sheet gives you the full 10 to 15 degrees. Because bone-dry air is starving to soak up water. Down along the Gulf Coast, where the air is already half water to begin with, you will get maybe 4 to 6 degrees off the sheet, and you will still want the air conditioner on the truly brutal days. That is real, and I am not going to pretend otherwise. But 4 to 6 free degrees, stacked with the night air and the shade, is the difference between a house you can live in and a house you cannot, and it still costs you nothing. There is real money in $10,000 of installation, and $200 a month of electricity, and $500 a year of filters and service, every single year, for the rest of your life. There is no money at all in an old cotton sheet and a bowl of water. So the simple thing sat quiet in houses like the one I grew up in, and in the linen closet of just about every home in this country. While families paid $700 a summer for what 20 minutes of work would have done half of for free. The thing I promised you at the start, the strangest one. Long before anybody had a refrigerator, people in the hottest places on earth kept their food cold with 2 clay pots and a handful of wet sand. You take 2 unglazed terracotta pots, one that fits inside the other with about an inch to spare, a few dollars each at any garden center, and they have to be unglazed so the water can breathe right through the clay. You set the little one inside the big one, plug the drain hole, and pack the gap between them full of coarse sand. Then you pour water into that sand until it will not take a drop more, and lay a damp cloth over the top. The water slowly weeps out through the outer pot and evaporates into the air, and that pulls the heat out of the inside, and the inner pot just sits there 10 to 15 degrees below the room, all day and all night, on about a cup of water. It will not cool a whole house, I will be straight with you, but it holds your vegetables and your butter at cellar temperature through the hottest day of the year for about $10, and there is not one moving part in the whole thing. A man in Nigeria won an international prize a while back for handing that same little cooler out to farmers who had no electricity, and it doubled how long their food lasted. 4,000 years old, and it still works. So here is what I want you to actually do. Tonight, before bed, open every window in the house at sundown and set an alarm for sunrise. When it goes off, get up and close it all. Every window, every shade, just that. And your house will be cooler tomorrow than it was today, and it did not cost you a dime. Then this week, dig an old cotton sheet out of the closet, wet it, hang it flat across an open window with a bowl of water underneath, and sit in that room for 20 minutes and feel what happens. And tell me down in the comments, what does your power bill hit in the worst of the summer? And which one of these are you going to try first? If your mother or your grandmother had a way of keeping the house cool that I did not name, the wet cloth on the back of the neck, the nap in the cellar, the mattress dragged out onto the porch, put it down there, because those little inherited tricks vanish the second nobody bothers to write them down. My grandmother used to tell me about motainai. It means nothing good should ever be wasted, not the thing in your hands, and not the knowing of how to keep it.